Join me today to unravel the mysteries surrounding Neptune and the eighth planet from the Sun. Discover how this celestial body influences our emotions, intuition, and dreams, and learn about the significance of doing the inner work called shadow work to understand Neptune's true message and energetic influence. Hi, welcome to Starwell Astrology. My name is Shari. I am a Western tropical astrologer, and I also specialize in shadow work. First, let's explore the symbolism of Neptune in astrology. Neptune rules the sign of Pisces, and it also rules the 12th house in the natal chart. Neptune is often related to the Greek god called Poseidon, who is the god of all the bodies of water, such as the river, the seas, and the ocean, and carries the trident. However, we must not forget that we are also bodies of water, since our bodies consist of roughly 70% water. The trident is also the glyph that represents Neptune in the astrology chart. Overall, the trident is a three-pronged instrument that represents divine mastery over the past, the present, the future, as well as the body, mind, and spirit. And the trident is shaped like a lightning bolt to indicate its dominion over heaven and earth. Neptune can exert great formidable force to command the weather, to bring such catastrophes as tornadoes, storms, and even earthquakes. Neptune's rulership of water, represented in astrology, is our emotions. We're emotionally connected to reality. We have an emotional entanglement with everything we experience in our lives, even if it is unconscious. Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house represent the completion of the zodiacal cycle of time. Pisces is the last sign and rules the 12th house, which is also the last house in the zodiacal wheel of karma. Neptune, Pisces, and the 12th house stores the Akashic records of all times and holds the memories of all lifetimes. The 12th house, in particular, stores our unprocessed and repressed emotional wounded memories that affect us on a psychological level. These traumatic memories are emotional, energetic impressions which gets carried through our DNA and passed on through family, our ancestral line, and even generationally and collectively over lifetimes and timelines. This is directly related to what we call karma, because karma simply means action. And whatever action we take, there will be consequences for that. So oftentimes, we react to life based on an emotional connection to what we're feeling. Our actions that we take, as I said, has an emotional connection to what we're doing, what we're feeling, and what we're thinking and how we're behaving. So oftentimes the action we take is an emotional reaction to unhealed, unprocessed wounds. And this inadvertently leads to self-undoing behavior, like addictions. Now, in astrotheology, Jesus was considered a fisherman. In the New Testament of the Bible, Jesus taught us about unconditional love and forgiveness, which is a direct representation of the Piscean age. Since the highest expression of Neptune is to merge with the divine or God, Neptune rules charity, compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Pisces, glyph, is the two fish. The two fish are linked together, but are swimming in opposite directions to symbolize the higher and the lower realms of consciousness, or heaven and earth, or spirit and matter. All of this reality is about duality. The polarizations of our mental projections give birth to this matrix reality. We must have contrast for this dimension to exist. Jesus was also associated with Zeus in the Greek mythology. He's also Jupiter, and Jupiter is the traditional ruling planet for Pisces, while Neptune is the modern planetary ruler. So let's talk about Neptune and what it represents. Neptune's influence can cause us to feel unfocused and unclear, or overwhelmed and lost. Neptune rules vices such as abuse of drugs and alcohol, the desire to escape reality through any means, whether through sex, food, drugs, video games, social media, or just living in our imagination, which also makes us creative, by the way. So Neptune also rules addictions and escapist behavior. Neptune can give us access to our creative side, the flow. It unleashes our hidden gifts and talents. We can get access to spiritual connections, to our intuition, to our dreams, to transcendental experiences such as deep meditation, out of body experiences, and psychic powers. Neptune gives us access also to the spiritual realms. So it is associated with removing the veils of conditioning. We can dissolve our dead weight or the heaviness of our karma and gain higher wisdom and, although rare, full access to enlightenment. The biblical story of Jesus being crucified, and he becomes Christ, the enlightened one, who went through his rebirth and resurrection. You can see my previous video on Pluto, where I discussed Pluto's influence on transformation and how to regenerate through a rebirthing process of healing through our trauma. And Jesus demonstrates the regenerative process of spiritual alchemy through his initiation trials as a rite of passage for liberation from his physical body, where he is now fully enlightened and is ready to ascend or ascends. Jesus has to go through a major crisis when he's accused and unfairly judged, then put to death for claiming to be the Son of God. Jesus' message clearly showed us that we are the way back to our true nature as divine beings. He teaches us about our divine sovereign. He clearly states that the kingdom of God is within us, as well as the kingdom of heaven is within us. You can watch my previous video on the sun and moon alchemy for more on this topic. From the perspective of astrotheology, the stories of Jesus is allegorical, and Jesus was the sacrificial lamb for humanity. His message is woven in the archetypical meaning of the planets. Pluto allows us to transform through a rebirth process of dying on the cross of matter to be reborn in Christ consciousness. When spiritually enlightened, this is our true nature, which Neptune is the archetype of this potential in all of us. Since Jesus' teaching seemed to be beyond our grasp, we look to idolize Jesus as an outer figure that we believe will somehow save us and do for us what we feel unable to do for ourselves. But Neptune gives us a way forward through the process of shadow work. We can learn that we can sacrifice our lower nature through the process of surrendering. When we work with Neptune through shadow work, we learn the lessons of surrendering. The word surrender often implies being passive, and although being passive is a Neptunian way of coping, it is not what is meant when we surrender. To surrender while under the influence of the higher expressions of Neptune is to trust the divine flow. We surrender to or offer up the mental noise and the identifications we feel to our emotional desires and attachments that keeps us seeking, striving, and grasping for what is other than here and now. But to surrender and sit in the present moment and just be with what is to allow access to our inner divinity, which is where the real solutions and real answers to our next step lie. If action is needed, then this is done from a state of being present. We avoid projecting into the future and instead trust that the present moment is enough. This is what it really means to surrender. When we simply witness our thoughts and our feelings and stay aware and present to what we are thinking and feeling, this allows us to see our programmed behavior and how we're operating through a conditioned gravitational pull towards automatic reactions. With the influence of Neptune, when we tap into the flow of the here and now, we gain real insights and metaphysical perspectives that illuminate and tap into the higher mind. We can navigate the depth of our subconscious and foster authentic personal growth. Staying surrendered is an important part of doing shadow work to get access to our deepest emotional wounds. We have to trust that whatever information is received or downloaded while staying open is what we are meant to heal. I know that we might envision that doing shadow work to face our emotional pain would be combative or invasive. However, healing through facing our emotional wounds simply require that we soften up and surrender to what we must acknowledge and face in ourselves. This is not about controlling what we feel or reprogramming the mind. Those are self-improvement techniques that might work for a while. But if we want deep and profound shifts at the level of our raising our conscious awareness, then shadow work is essential. If we can stay open to accepting all parts of ourselves, this gives us permission to relax into our authentic self once we excavate and heal our emotional wounds. As we shed layers of our emotional wounded patterns, what remains is the authentic self, our true personality. And this does not require any mental gymnastics or reprogramming. What has already happened cannot be undone. But the fact that it has happened does not refute the emotional wounding, especially if we feel emotionally identified with our pain. However, what we must accept and surrender to is that the only point of real power rests in the now moment. And what is available in the here and now is the place that we can take action from. We tend to ruminate in the past, but the past has no power, nor does the future. It is only in this moment that you can actually make a change. And that change should start with being present and aware now. If we do the practice of shadow work and start to surrender to each moment, eventually we're able to forgive ourselves and others and know that we are unconditional love. However, this is a more advanced stage that can be attained when we do shadow work. Surrendering to the spiritual flow of life may sound like a typical idealistic notion of Neptune, but if we really stay open and surrender, we can rest in our true state of grace that aligns us in our higher consciousness. Neptune brings us closer to our own divinity. It's the one planet that does this for us. And when we trust that everything we need already exists within us and is not an external thing that we need to get from somewhere else, we are resting in our true power. As a matter of fact, Neptune is the highest spiritual state that we can attain in our human existence. And when we have access to the higher octaves of Neptune, we have access to the inner state of ecstasy and bliss. Neptune's influence brings the deepest and most profound desire to know God. It is the true spiritual call, experienced as a deep inner yearning to merge with the divine. We discover that the divine is within us and not an externalized figure that we have been conditioned to believe. Once we work on clearing our emotional blocks, it opens our heart and we have the compassion for ourselves and others, since we will begin to see ourselves in the eyes of others. And we get to know the deeper side of ourselves through the energetic influences of Neptune. We transcend our wounded self that advances us at a soul level. To sense the deep yearning and call of the divine requires a silent mind that allows us to merge into the oneness of everything. While in union with divine source, if we learn to stay anchored in our bodies, we can get in touch with who we are on the most authentic level. When we stay present in the now moment, we are authentically ourselves until we re-identify with our ideas about who we think we are. and we get lost in this attachment to the conditioned ego. However, we are programmed to search for deeper meaning in our lives through our external experiences. So we reach for more information, more ideas, more techniques, more methods that seem just within our reach, but soon realize that these things that we reach for are never quite the thing or answer that we're seeking. But with deep shadow work, we discover that what we are looking for, we are already. We just think that we need to add something to ourselves, and what we are seeking must come from something, someone, or somewhere other than us. We search for more meaning to life, but we do this by placing our expectations outside of us onto others instead of turning inwards and facing ourselves, which is the practice of shadow work, where we continuously place the attention back on ourselves and notice what we're thinking, doing, feeling in each moment. We believe that if we keep our gaze on our external life, then life will unfold somehow to give us answers to ourselves that will somehow make us feel better. I can promise you that true answers cannot come from anywhere, anyone, or anything that is an external experience. Otherwise, it's just a passing moment, and the only thing that is constant is the awareness that is ever present within us. You are this awareness. You get to know this as the authentic self. You must tap into your own inner flow to gain access to a deeper sense of self through a higher level of consciousness to know thyself unconditionally. And Neptune needs us to stop believing and start knowing. Know thyself. To tap into the highest octave of Neptune, we must surrender and be humble enough to confront our false sense of self that I call the ego identity. This conditioned side of us needs to be offered up for healing. And the only way to do this is to surrender in each moment. The hidden darker side, called the shadow self, gets exposed when we lower our guard and become vulnerable enough to stay open and surrendered to facing our emotional wounds. In order to heal in this profound way requires courage and the desire to stand in our inner authority and face all the wounded aspects of the false self. To be brave enough to face our fears by acknowledging and accepting our darkness in a surrendered state allows us to witness the hidden parts of us that we want to avoid seeing. But once we do this, we must take accountability for whatever we see in ourselves. Simple examples of this is to accept that we can be envious or spiteful, or to notice that we can be manipulative, competitive, obsessive, aggressive, vindictive. We might even betray a friend's trust by gossiping about them. And then later we might deny this behavior even if we only need to confront this truth in ourselves. Notice how we hide from our own shame. Pay attention to how we cower away from looking straight at our imperfections, our fears, and our phobias. These are aspects of us that we are not willing to acknowledge, but regardless of how we disown them, these unintegrated aspects of us that I call the shadow self will continue to exist as a part of our conditioned personality. Okay, this makes up the unconscious part of our personality, and we unknowingly reflect our wounded patterns and will receive experiences that are compatible reflections of these unprocessed aspects. In other words, we relive our emotional wounding unconsciously over and over again until we are ready to acknowledge that they exist. So our wounds exist as a part of us even if we disown them. These wounded parts are painful to accept, so they will get suppressed and remain in the peripheries of our lives, affecting us in unconscious ways. Unfortunately, until our emotional wounds are acknowledged and faced in ourselves, they cannot be integrated for healing. In order for transformation to happen, this is essential. It cannot be bypassed no matter how much we want to. In my previous video, I spoke about transforming our emotional wounds through the energetic influences of Pluto. Once we have done the work of Pluto, who wants us to transform and will go through great lengths to bring traumatic situations to us for us to ultimately confront and heal. If we manage to work with Pluto, he opens the gates of the underworld and will grant us access to the higher octaves of Neptune. Just a quick note, planets are really a reflection of us. They actually do not do anything to us. They only reflect the possible potential available to us. These potentials are based on our own reflections and projections of reality. To explain this further would require another video, but I want to make this point even though I am sharing this from the perspective of the planetary influences on us. It's just easier to talk about the planet's influence on us rather than explaining this from the place of taking responsibility for the experiences we're having as being a part of our own reflections. Pluto helps us to dissolve and transform our negative energy to higher frequencies that give us access to our higher self or higher consciousness. When Pluto transforms our lower nature, we are more empowered to live aligned in our authentic self. At this point, we can then work with Neptune. We're granted the key to the heavenly realms that Neptune rules once we get through Pluto's initiation trials. Until then, we can only work with Neptune in its lower capacity, as I previously described. To gain access to Neptune in the deepest and most profound way is to tap into the inner yearning. It is the spiritual call or urge to merge with the divine within us. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you'll consider liking and subscribing. And also, I want to mention that I offer readings and I do offer one-on-one shadow work. My information is below. Thank you.